In episode 32, Christy and Kim explained how therapeutic yoga can help you find comfort in the discomfort. In this episode, I'll introduce you to Sandra Litke, and we'll learn more about the practice of yoga. It goes much deeper than many of us might realize. Welcome to the PEEP Podcast. I'm your host, Nicolle, and on this episode, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Sandra Litke. But first, I want to say a quick thank you to my listeners in Peru. When I look at where people who listen to this podcast live, it amazes me. Australia, Ireland, Zimbabwe, and other countries, and of course the United States. And I appreciate all of you. I just want to call out Peru because somehow the people listening there have put me on the charts consistently, and I'm absolutely humbled and grateful for it. Thank you so much. Now back to the topic of this episode, yoga. Before you think, nah, I know about yoga, and flip to another episode, hold on. You might not know as much as you think you do. I've been practicing yoga off and on for nearly a decade. I thought, you find a studio or an online teacher, learn the moves and the breathing, and get comfortable with it. And that's it. But in talking with Sandra in the interview you're about to hear, I learned that there's so much more to it than most Americans realize. But I'll let her explain it much better than I can. Sandra Litke teaches a style of yoga that is at once strong and soulful. Viewing your body as the most direct doorway to the present moment, Sandra weaves wisdom from the yoga Vedantic tradition into joyful flow classes that challenge and uplift. Sandra loves yoga for the sense of wholeness and vitality it brings to her life. She seeks to hold classes infused with wisdom, space, and play, always guiding students to the potential of yoga as a lifelong practice of self-mastery. Sandra started yoga for the physical benefits and immersed herself in the culture of hot power yoga for several years, earning her teaching stripes early in her career at DC-based Down Dog Yoga. Her curiosity later led her to discover Himalayan Tantra Yoga and to deepen her studies with the Sattva Yoga Academy in Rishikesh, India, at the 300-hour level in 2017 and as a master teacher in 2022. Sandra is the owner of Awake Corporate Yoga and provides office yoga and wellness programs to businesses throughout the Triangle. Over the last decade, she has led thousands of students in non-traditional settings like offices, parks, festivals, and the occasional yoga studio. Sandra lives in Raleigh with her husband and golden retriever. She's a self-professed outdoor kid, music lover, and initiator of deep conversations over coffee. Practice with Sandra in person with Raleigh NC-based Nova Retreats, and keep in touch via Instagram at SandraLitke_flows. Let's dive in with Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Hey, Nikki, I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
I am so excited to have you on the show to talk about one of my favorite forms of exercise, which is yoga. I had a couple of women on recently, Christy and Kim, and they talked about therapeutic yoga, but we really didn't get into the basics. So I feel like it's time to take a step back and just kind of educate the listeners who aren't as familiar with the practice as we are. And I'm not anywhere close to as familiar with it as you are. And so just thank you for being here to share your knowledge and your experience with us.
Oh, heck yeah. If just one person who listens to this decides to try out a yoga class or take a yoga class online, that's a huge success. I just want to get the message out there that, yoga is for everyone and there's a style of yoga for everyone.
Awesome. So, what led you to practice yoga? How did you get started in all of this?
Yeah, so my journey started over 10 years ago, and I call it a journey because the kind of reasons I got into yoga and the style of yoga I was doing 12 years ago is very different from what I do today and what I seek to teach today. But every step of that journey was necessary and illuminating. And again, I teach a lot of fundamentals because I teach in offices and I teach in public parks. And I'm often teaching not necessarily beginners, but first timers. And so it's kind of worth admitting that I started yoga for the physical benefits. I had gained weight in college. I loved to drink beer. And I went to yoga because I wanted to get back to my skinny self that I was in high school. And it'll do that for you, by the way. If you want yoga for the physical benefits, they are there and they are fantastic. So I had a friend in college who was a very close friend, and she was the one who was like, Sandra, like, I know your competitive mindset. I know you miss, being on, sports teams, try this yoga class with me. And it was right there in the student center. And I remember going and not only getting that sense that I used to get I was a competitive soccer player as a kid, not only getting that sense of being in a community environment, which you get in like maybe a packed flow class where there's 20 people in the room and you're breathing together and you're challenging the person to your right and to your left. So I got that feeling of movement and community, which I had missed. But then there was something else that I couldn't put my finger on. And I noticed it as I walked out of class and I was walking back to my dorm. And it was just a lightness of being. And like maybe just, being there, talking with my friend, being in the present moment. And for that moment, I wasn't, worried about my classes or what I looked like or what people around me were doing. It was just a very sense of ease and what I would now call embodiment. And so I noticed that very much right away, and it became just kind of snowballed over the next few years in college. I found a yoga studio in Winston-Salem in the Arts District, and you had to go up this rickety set of stairs, and they were 90-minute classes, and I would like move my whole schedule around to get to these morning classes. And then I'd come back, and I was in the business school at the time over at Wake Forest, and I just felt so much better. And again, I'll use that word, at ease and embodied. And I started to notice, less judgment and jealousy of the people around me. And once again, just being happy in my body. And at that point, it was still about the physical. It was about letting go of addictions to alcohol and the other fun things you get into when you're 20 years old in college. And it became a non-negotiable. So I would go to yoga probably 3 to 5 times a week. And at that point, it wasn't on my mind to teach. It was like, I'm going to do this yoga practice so that I can do my best at school, and so that I can show up for my friendships, and so that I'm not depressed, which I was dealing with in the winters, especially now that I was living on my own. So it started with, hey, I want to lose weight. And then it stuck around because it was like, hey, this is really like becoming a lifeline to a sense of ease and joy in like the rest of my life.
I can totally understand that.
Yeah.
It's made such a difference in the way I feel about myself since I started doing it. And I've stopped and started over the last 10 years.
Oh, for sure.
It's so easy to fall out of a habit and then go back
Mm-hmm.
in and fall out. But I've been doing it consistently 4 to 5 times a week since December. So I think I'm finally like solidly in the habit and loving it.
Yeah, there's this kind of shift that happens, and one of my teachers described it. At first, you need to develop a discipline in your practice. And it's going to be hard. Like let's say you practice in the mornings. It's going to be hard to wake up that half an hour early and get to your practice. And there's going to be a sense of struggle around it. And so that's when you're in the mode of discipline. But at some point, there will be a shift, and that discipline turns into a devotion. And all of a sudden, it's so much easier to put your feet on the ground and walk to your mat. And there's a sense of gratitude of having your mat there and having this space. So for anyone considering starting a yoga practice, it's often said it takes about 28 days, this kind of 4-week mark of moving from that like disciplined suffering mode to like, yes, I get to do my yoga practice. And it's this devotion. It's not devotion to anything outside of yourself, right? It's devotion to that sense of ease and wholeness and vitality inside of yourself.
Yeah. I find when I start my days that way, because I do roll out of bed at 5 a.m. and I do video workouts. So I go pick my favorite one for that, like whatever feels like should be the one for that morning.
Yeah.
And do it. And I have gotten to the point where when I'm setting my alarm at night, I'm thinking, yeah, I really do want to work out tomorrow, instead of, God, do I really want to wake up early?
I know. Wouldn't I be so much more productive if I got 30 more minutes of sleep? Like,
Yes.
no, you won't. Do the yoga.
Yeah. No, I'm much calmer throughout the day. I have a clearer head throughout the day. And I can roll with the punches so much easier. And never thought I'd find a workout that could do that for me.
Yeah.
So when and why did you decide to become a teacher?
Yeah. So I graduated, this is back in 2012, and I kind of knew the path before me. I was going to go home and work for my family's construction company as a job site supervisor and build big, beautiful houses with my brothers and my dad. And I'd been working with them since I was 15 years old. But because I knew that's where I was heading, I kind of, at this point, I'm really close knit with my family. So I remember coming home and like selling it to them, like, okay, I'm going to take this. I'm not going to travel for the whole summer, but I'm going to take this 30-day immersive yoga training because I want to know more about yoga. And I've got so many questions. And so I signed up for, in the yoga certification world, kind of the first level of teacher trainings is usually a 200-hour course. So I did mine with an institute that actually had a trip to Bali. So lucky me, I went to Bali for a month and I studied yoga in an immersive environment. And that was such a game changer for so many reasons. Even before I get into the teachings and the teachers, it's 30 days where you're eating beautiful, nutritious, organic food. There's no outside distractions. There's no phone. There's no internet. There's no college parties. So just by means of like being in this beautiful, nurturing environment, a lot of my walls began to fall down. I was able to have really kind of deep and self-reflective writings and conversations. And then the actual training itself was pretty good. It was in Vinyasa yoga, which is what you often see here in the US. So it's a physical practice, but they were really good about bringing in kind of the wider umbrella of why Vinyasa yoga works. And so seeing kind of that beginnings of how yoga alchemy actually makes shifts in the body, mind, and spirit was just absolutely eye-opening to me. And I realized that I was going to be a lifelong yoga practitioner. And I realized that you have to, if you're really curious, it takes a lifetime to move through everything. And I came home and I could teach an hour-long vinyasa class and keep it interesting. And one thing they were really big on, this was the Yandara Institute, and they're based in Baja, Mexico, but they have a few places that they teach, was teaching in your own voice, which was wonderful because sometimes if you train with, say, an American studio that has a lot of locations, they want you to, this is kind of crude, but they want you to make the sausage the way their other teachers make the sausage. Yeah. And they want to have a brand. But that's not what Yandara wanted. They wanted you to find your voice and your joy and your passion, because if you let the yogic wisdom flow through your vessel and your unique self-expression, that's how you're going to find students who want to learn from you. Because there's thousands of yoga teachers out there, but you have something to teach someone. And the only way they're going to find you is if you're being authentic. So that idea of a unique self-expression, of kind of vigorously seeking my voice and protecting it, I got at Yandara. But even then, I wasn't even totally sure that I was going to teach. I just wanted the background and I wanted the information. I was a pretty intellectual kid. So I was like, I want the information. So that I could go and get to work and practice in the mornings and kind of own that. But I would say somewhere along that time I didn't use this word then, but it was a spiritual awakening. It was a realization that I was going to live a different life than I originally thought. I was going to live a life different than my parents and my brothers, and that I was interested in spirituality. So all of a sudden, the yoga practice wasn't about being skinny. It was about being open and in tune with what nature was calling on me to do in any given moment.
I love that. So can you go back for a second? You mentioned kind of the alchemy of yoga.
Yeah.
Could you explain that a little bit for us?
Oh, I'd love to. And some of these ideas come from later trainings I did, which we can get to later. But there's a few different kind of perspectives that yoga science has on awakening and higher consciousness and getting to our most integrated selves. And the one I think I'd like to talk about first is this idea of the koshas, Koshas. And this is the idea that we are more than just our physical body. We are actually five layers of bodies, koshas, which translates to sheaths. So we have these 5 sheaths of our selves in which our soul inhabits. So the first is this physical layer. It's called the Annamaya kosha. Anna is food. So you eat the mango becomes you. This is your Annamaya kosha. When you go to yoga because you want to lose weight and feel strong, you're working your Annamaya kosha. Warrior 2 is a shape within the Annamaya kosha. And you got to start there. If there's pain in the physical body, it's going to be really hard for you to deepen and activate the other layers. You need to take care of it. You need to feed it. You need to let it sleep. The Annamaya kosha is integral, of course. And then you have the next layer, which we share with all living things, and it's called the pranamaya kosha, your energetic layer, your electrical layer. We share it with animals and plants. And the pranamaya kosha is beautiful because it never ages. So even as our physical body, is going to change with every day that we walk this earth, your pranamaya kosha is eternal. And that prana, it's energy. It never dies. It just transmutes and exchanges. And so some of that, glow in your eye when you leave a yoga class is that activation of your pranamaya kosha. Sometimes you might even feel tingling across your shoulders after a really wonderful class. And there are practices that sometimes you don't get in Western studios that work directly on this energetic layer. They're called Kriya. Kriya yoga is electrical yoga. It works directly on this pranamaya kosha. So then we have the third layer, which is the mental emotional body. You get into this with meditation. Things really start to shift when you begin to clear your, this one's called the manomaya kosha, the mental emotional body. You start to get rid of the cyclical thoughts, the negative thoughts. You start to reside in the emotions of things like love and gratitude and abundance and creation and all the wonderful hormones that are created when you're in these elevated states. So that's our manomaya kosha. So when we have these 3 integrated, and hold up, if you can get these 3 layers integrated, your physical body, energetic body, and your mental emotional body, like you are on to something. You're woke. This is it. You've entered an awake state. You probably feel incredible. You're dancing down the streets. Your friends are asking you like, wow, you look great today. Like, I know, I showered and did yoga, but you're integrated. And when you have these 3 layers, like vibing, we'll use the word harmonized, you get access to these more subtle layers, the wisdom body and the bliss body. And the wisdom body is really beautiful. And I've only glimpsed it in short times. My teacher calls me fluctuating awake. I might not get there in this lifetime, but, I'm glad I know it exists. And these people who live in the wisdom body, they're intuitives. They have cosmic consciousness. We might call them clairvoyant. They have access to what the yogis would call the akasha, which is this, field of knowledge that is accessible to those who are truly in tune with the moment. And that's the wisdom bottom. And it's just wisdom. And you might get there spontaneously as you age and experience and process things. but through the system of yoga science, you can get there faster. And you can experience, I'm 30, I'm going to turn 32 next month. And, would I have gotten here without yoga? Yeah, but I don't think I would have gotten here this soon. So you got the wisdom body, good stuff. You can activate the wisdom body not only by integrating the first three, but by immersing yourself in true wisdom. So, maybe you attend church and you really love being immersed in the I don't even know what they call that in the sermons, and they resound with you, and you're lucky enough to have truly wise people in your world. Like, yes, that helps encourage the wisdom body. Reading spiritual books, spending time daily or weekly, just like not necessarily immersing, but touching in with the wisdom that has been written down in humanity. And it's so easy to go through life these days and like somehow not touch on any of that. There's so much other content out there. So, look at your bookshelf. Is there something there that, connects you to the great masters? And then you've got the bliss body. And the bliss body comes spontaneously when the other koshas are in alignment. It's electromagnetically really just incredibly expansive. And it's that state of pure love and bliss, and that, deep knowing that you are connected to a greater whole. And, if the more we can be in touch with that, I think the more lovely and satisfying life can be.
That's beautiful. I had no idea about the 5 koshas. That's complete news to me.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's, if you kind of have the chance to stumble upon it, I certainly did. The first studio I got really involved with when I got back from my first training, it was a purely physical yoga studio. In fact, it was 100 degrees in there, but the teachers were incredibly committed and passionate. The community was, again, committed and passionate. So some of that alchemy would happen even within the hot power yoga setting, because you had the community, you had the incredible teachers, you had moments of silence, you had breathing. And so it was there, even though it wasn't necessarily codified or labeled as such. And I think you can stumble again into this kind of true yoga alchemy from time to time, or you go out and seek it through things like Tantra yoga, which is now what I'm a teacher of.
So what is Tantra yoga?
So Tantra is yoga as it has existed in the Himalayas for thousands of years. Important to say, anytime you're kind of recording or putting the word Tantra out there, the word has gotten hijacked. Totally hijacked, I think, by some British folks who were like, wow, look at these barbarians, like, God, Tantra means, it has to, people think, and it's just, it needs to be, intellect needs to be corrected there. Tantra does not mean like yogic sex. Tantra means expansion. It means opening your awareness to see that you're part of a greater web. Tan literally means energy, and tra means expansion, so it's energy expansion. And within this umbrella of Tantra, you have yogic wisdom, you have meditation, you have breath work, you have asana, and then in that little tiny chapter of asana, you have vinyasa yoga, which is what we do here in the United States. And it has all these other layers. So it's like this many-limbed tree. And unfortunately, only a small part has been brought over to the US in mass amounts, which I'm not going to hate on, because I got into yoga for the physical and it gave me so many gifts. But it was my curiosity about why yoga worked that led me to continue studying, and eventually stumbling across this school called the Sattva Yoga Academy in Rishikesh, India, which is where I continue to study. And I'm now a master trainer with the Sattva Academy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I finished it. So they now offer so much online because of the pandemic. So I did my 300-hour with them in 2017, and that led me to finally walk away from construction and become a full-time yoga teacher. And then, or it gave me the confidence to do that really. And then when I saw they were doing, an ongoing training online to become one of the master teachers, I was like, heck yes. So it took me about a year. But it was just more and more interaction with that wisdom and knowledge. And it's been really wonderful.
So you don't have to answer this, but I'm going to ask.
Yeah.
How did your family feel about you walking away from the family business?
So I would say overall incredibly supportive. Good. Because they saw how happy I was. They had been to my classes where I was teaching packed rooms, and I feel very lucky that I have found a passion and a purpose that makes me feel as good as I do. And I think they saw that. Of course, my dad, I think, said something like, "It's a dream," when I told him my plan. And I was like, "Yeah, Dad, it's a dream." But I'm gonna go see if I can do it. I have 2 older brothers who also worked in the company, and I'm really close with both of them, and they both had their own responses, and they were kind of perfect. The middle one, who's currently runs the finances of the building company, and he's like a very type A guy. He's like, "Well, wherever you put your attention, you should be there 100%. And I don't think you're giving either career 100% right now. And you don't have any dependents or a mortgage. So now is the time to try." I was like, okay, thanks.
Good advice.
And then the older one looked at me deadpan. He was like, "I'm surprised it's taking you this long."
Aw.
So they were pretty supportive. And it was a different lifestyle, different income level. It was very interesting to go from being able to introduce myself as a land development acquisition manager for a major DC firm, to saying, "Hey, I'm Sandra. I'm a yoga teacher." And after being on a certain path my whole life, business school, and always imagining I'd go back and get my MBA, it was just a different change. And something that I did struggle with, and I continue to this day, is if, say, we were talking about how yoga practice sometimes comes and go, we fall out of the habit. Mm-hmm. If I fall out of the habit, say I go a couple weeks and I don't make it to my mat and don't do my meditation, all of a sudden it's like the world starts closing in on me. And I'm like, oh my God, my friend who wanted to be a doctor is now an OBGYN, and she's a doctor. And my friend who works in a bank is now a vice president. And oh my God, my husband just got, promoted to like senior, whatever. And I'm like, no. You decided that labels don't matter. You made that decision. You already made that decision. You have to remember the state that you made that decision in. And that's when you go back to the tools and you go back to the practice and you get aligned in your mental body and your energetic body, and all of a sudden you tap into that wisdom body, and it's like, oh yeah, Sandra, you have a purpose, and that purpose is to share yoga with people who want to hear it from you. And it's a constant practice, because if you fall out of it, it's really easy to start comparing and forget why you did it. Yeah.
I totally get that.
Yeah. Yeah, my family, I think they enjoy it. They have 2 kids who stayed in the company business and one who flew the coop, but I think that ratio works out for them.
Yeah. It seems like a pretty good one. And as long as everybody is following their passion, it's great that you've got a supportive family who was there for you like that.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the breathing. So I'm going to just tell everybody that the way that we met is I think everybody knows I have a day job. My employer is this awesome company who brought you in to teach desk yoga.
Yeah.
And a lot of what you were teaching was breathing techniques. So I enjoyed the idea of being able to do that at my desk. I don't know why it had never occurred to me that was an idea. When I get a little stressed out, I'll do some breathing and calm down, but I don't think to actually really think of it as yoga, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So let's talk about why breathing is important.
Yeah. Well, I a few minutes ago, I was kind of painting that picture of like yoga as a whole is a really holistic practice. It's taking in the wisdom, it's doing your meditation, it's breath work. And then a part of it is going to be that yoga asana and that movement. And part of my mission is to get people to understand that even if the movement is maybe inaccessible to you or uninteresting to you, there are still so many doorways for you to explore yoga and get these really incredible benefits that we're talking about, like having coherence between your heart and your brain, and having in tunement with this, what's your purpose in this moment? What's my next right move? So let's talk about breath. Breath is unique in that it's one way that we can directly interact with our autonomic nervous system. So when you take yourself back to, high school biology, you learned that there's two sides of your nervous system. There's the one that we control. We move our fingers, we move our legs, we jump up and down. And then there's the side that we can't control. Our heart beats without us thinking about it. Our organs digest and we breathe. However, we have this built-in master switch in the breath, because you can stop breathing. You can take a deep inhale. You can hold your breath in. And in between those levels, there are so many manipulations and actions that you can take. In my school at Sattva, I don't know how many breaths I've been initiated to, but it's well over 50. These ways that you can manipulate your breath to get a desired end.
Wow.
Trying to decide where to go next. So with every inhale that you take, you get a little bit of an uptick. So if you think about your nervous system as your fight or flight, which is your sympathetic nervous system, and your rest and digest, which is your parasympathetic nervous system, you get a little bit of a shift every time you inhale, brings you up, parasympathetic or sympathetic, and every time you exhale, brings you down, parasympathetic. And we do this all day long. So you can use inhales and exhales as a way to, like a musician with its instrument, directly interface with your nervous system. So if you want to try something right now, and it'll take maybe 30 seconds, we're going to play with box breathing. And box breathing has been taken even by the US Marine Corps. And it's how they teach their guys and gals to stay present in the moment and keep their nervous system at a nice neutral pace. So box breathing, you can visualize in your mind a square. And we're going to breathe all the air out. You can even open your mouth. And then breathing through the nose. Inhale for a count of 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale nose 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold empty 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 4. Hold 4. Exhale 4. Hold empty 4. Let's do a third one. Inhale for a count of 4. Hold. Exhale. Hold empty. Good talk. Yeah. So box breathing is an example of something that you can do when you're driving, when you're walking, when you're watching TV, when you're relaxing. If that kind of 4-second to 6-second hold is kind of the sweet spot. And what we're doing here is bring your nervous system back to neutral. And it takes just enough attention that your mind isn't wandering. Because that's the next part of it. Breath work is also a really great doorway to meditation, because you're not saying, okay, sit there and don't think about anything, or sit there and notice what you're thinking, which is also like really difficult. It's, hey, here's a little, you're treating your brain like a monkey or like a 4-year-old, and you're like, hey, here's this Rubik's Cube. I want you to turn it slowly and tell you what you see, whether you're counting to 4 or something like that. There's other breathwork practices where you might be tracing areas of your body. You could trace the hemispheres and frontal lobe of your brain. You could light up the 7 energy centers along your central channel. Again, there's so many, and they all have kind of a purpose and an effect. You could think of them like a tuning fork, and every breathwork practice has a different frequency that it's helping us align with. So these, I'm thinking about a lecture that my teacher Anand was giving recently. Like, you think about this yoga tradition, and if you read a textbook in the US, it might say yoga's been around for 1,500 years or something. If you ask the Tantrikas in the Himalayas, it's been around for much, much longer than that. We're talking 5,000 years, like prehistoric yogi sadhakas living in caves up in the mountains, just studying and exploring what it is to be human. The very first yoga would have been sound. So you're probably familiar with the sound. Om. Yeah. That was kind of discovered by multiple minds to be this primordial, almost Big Bang-like sound that helps you connect with the fabric of reality. And so that sound is kind of where it started. And then it went on to like, well, what if we breathe like this? Like, what if we breathe really, really fast for a really, really long time? How does that feel? And so continue for 5,000 years. And there is a breath work or a technique for everything. Like, they tried it. If you're trying to get there, like, the yogis did it. And a lot of those things for many years were kept under lock and key. You had to travel to the mountains, and you had to, bow yourself at the feet of the guru, and maybe it would work for you, maybe you didn't. But luckily it's 2022, and they have opened the gates, and there are places that you can go if you're a sincere practitioner, and you can learn this codified version of yoga. And some of the things are, easy enough to do at your desk in your office in Raleigh, North Carolina. And so when I realized that, I was like, well, I think I can do that. And I'm done teaching hot power yoga to fit people. I want to teach yoga to the people who need it, and who don't, who maybe haven't gotten the message that they can get it.
And that actually brings me to my next question. I know you said anyone can do yoga, but are there certain people that you would recommend it for specifically?
So I'm going to give you a little more yoga Sanskrit terms.
Okay.
So in each of us, there are these 3 states that are kind of always, you could say, at war, but I would say they're present. Those states are tamas, rajas, and sattva. If you were teaching this to a child, you call them the 3 little devils, and they're all trying to be in charge of your being and your mind and your state of being. So the first one, tamas, is kind of like a heaviness. It's slow moving, it's lazy, it's lethargic. It'd really rather just sit on the couch and watch Netflix, order fried food and greasy French fries, and it's all the processed food, and it's all the I'll do it tomorrow-ness that exists somewhere in us. It's like a quiet town in the deep South that hasn't changed for hundreds of years. And underneath of it is a very terrifying tension. It is not a pleasant place to be. Rajas is on the other end. It's New York City on a Tuesday morning heading to work. It's a little too much caffeine. It's it's the North Carolina Reaper pepper. It's a lot. And you want a little bit of that. You want a little bit of Rajas in your day. It gets us up, it gets us going. You want somebody with Rajas on your team, they get stuff done. But you don't want to be there all the time. You're going to have a hard time falling asleep at night. You may not be the most pleasant to come home to. You want some Rajas, but not too much. And then the middle is sattva. If you hear the yogis say it, they say sattva, because the V is like a W sound, sattva. And sattva is this harmonious, balanced, and transcendent state. Not to this, not to that. So you'll notice the lineage I study in is the Sattva Yoga Academy. And so you're asked, who is yoga for? Well, we're all going to have moments where we're a little tamasic and we need to bring ourselves up to sattva. And we're always going to have moments where we're a little rajasic. We need ourselves bringing us kind of down regulated into sattva. So it's for everyone. And there's going to be practices that get you there. I think some people need to be brought down from that rajasic state into sattva, and they accidentally walk into a fitness yoga studio, and they don't find what they're looking for. Like, oh, that wasn't really relaxing. That, I thought this was supposed to make me feel at ease. Well, maybe what you were really looking for was a yin yoga class with comfortable long holds and, spiritual music and a lot of spaciousness from the teacher. And then maybe it's the other way. Maybe you're like, man, I really got to start moving my body. I have back pain. Everything hurts. So I'm going to go to a yin class. Well, sweetheart, I don't know if you need a yin class. I think you need to get out and go to that studio that's going to have you do sun salutations and, relearn how to do push-ups, even if you have to do them on your knees. So depending on where you're coming from, there's going to be a yoga for you. I will say that one thing I've noticed a lot just in the women that I've teach, my favorite people to teach these days are young professional women who, don't want to give up anything on their drive for a career, but they also don't want to give up their health and vitality. And they're starting to feel like it's one or the other. So that life balance. And I think there's a lot of it, especially, my generation, anxiety is the word I hear all the time. And I think yoga can help with that so much. I think anxiety is often caused by our mind being unable to feel safe in the present moment. And, what that ends up looking like is constant fear or negative envisioning of the future or fretting over the past. And through a yoga practice, we start to not only feel safe and whole in our body, like this is a place I can be, but we also get that mental awareness where we notice when our mind is skipping off in the future and we're able to pull it back to like, well, what's here now? What can I be grateful for now? Like what feels good now? And after a time, and this is without, I'm not saying that therapy doesn't have a place. It absolutely does. But you don't necessarily have to pull out all of the traumatic moments of your life in order to, be comfortable in this moment. We can use yoga techniques to just be comfortable in this moment.
That is so important.
Yeah.
So let's see. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on? I'm sure if we could probably talk all night about yoga. And I'm going to get off the call with you and have like a million questions come to mind and say, why didn't I ask her this? But
we can do a 2.0 later in the year.
Right. That would be great. But is there anything else that you just wanted to get across to the listeners about yoga?
So we talked a lot about, finding a style that works for you. And, a couple things I want to say. If you have yet to find either an online person or studio or an in-person person or studio. Wow, that was great language, Sandra. Do it. Start looking around, be open-minded. If you don't like a teacher, try another one. Find that person whose authentic voice speaks to you. They don't have to be totally woke cosmic individuals. They just have to be a few steps ahead of you in order to teach you something and get started. The other thing I'd say is if you haven't found a meditation practice that works for you, that has been the single most influential thing in my life over the last few years. I practice a form of Vedic meditation. So it's a very active meditation. We talk a little more about what that's like. But I think a daily meditation is bar none the most helpful thing you can do for yourself.
Okay, if you don't mind, go ahead and talk a little bit more about Vedic.
For sure. So there's two kind of worlds of meditation for the most part, not getting into things that have come out of South America. And there's so many variations of meditation in the world. And Vedic meditation may not be for you. Again, if it doesn't work, keep looking. But I have found that a lot of what my peers, maybe this is East Coast, I don't know, but they do insight meditation or what's coming from the Buddhist tradition of mindfulness meditation. And what that is all really about is clearing the mind, being able to notice your thoughts and send them away. You might have heard if a thought comes in, it's like a cloud, let it go. Yeah. And that's really beautiful. And it can bring you an incredible sense of calm and ease. But I find that it's missing an integral element that Vedic meditation brings in. What Vedic meditation brings in is a sense of action. and intention. So when you practice Vedic meditation, you use breath work, mantra, and kriya, usually in a short succession of like 20 minutes. And so not only are you getting that open-mindedness of the Buddhist meditations, but you're also getting an extreme focus that is unique to Vedic meditation. So for example, every day when I sit down, I do about 2 minutes of breath work. I usually do alternate nostril breathing because it really quickly harmonizes the hemispheres in my brain. It's just complex enough that my mind doesn't wander. So if you're doing, like say, counting alternate nostril breathing, like that's just interesting enough that I can't be thinking about my grocery list. and it wakes up my diaphragm. And like I said, it clears the nostrils. So you get this kind of like, if you have any brain fog, like that'll go away. And then I shift into my Sattva yoga meditation, which would take some time to initiate you in. And Nikki, you're always welcome to reach out and I'll teach this to you. But what this specific meditation does is it hones your focus to a single point. So it gives you that ability to dispel distractions. So that means if you're working on something, it should take you 40 minutes. It's going to take you 40 minutes. You're not going to check your phone. You're not going to get up to go make a cup of tea. You're not going to check your email. So this single pointed focus is so key, and you can continue to grow it and grow it and grow it. And so with, years of Vedic meditation practice, your focus becomes sharp like a knife. And you know it. If you meet someone who has a really deep practice, if they give you your full attention and look you in the eyes, it can almost be disconcerting because you feel like they're looking into your soul.
Yeah. I have met people like that, and yes. Looking back, those probably were people who did that practice, like that just fits. But at the time, it was like kind of like that's intense.
Yeah, for sure. And people call me intense all the time. Like they're like, whoa, like what are you doing here? And you just let them go. Like not everybody has to like you. So that's kind of the key. And then the last thing you do is mantra work. So, I work with a mantra. I've been working with it for a couple of years, and you repeat it in your mind and you try to clear out all else. And so that helps to kind of reset the grooves in your brain. So, I might wake up thinking about, gosh, what was it? Well, I was worried about, something stupid I said yesterday in a class I taught. I don't need to be thinking about that. So instead you train your brain to have positive thoughts, and these mantras can mean all types of things. And if you work with a trainer like me, we can help find you that mantra that you can work with for a time.
So you said breathwork, mantra, and kriya?
Kriya, yes.
What is that?
So that's so for the Vedic meditation, there's a specific practice. We call it the Sattva yoga meditation. And without getting too much into it, it's a combination of breath and awareness. So I have used the word kriya many times today. Kriya is another practice, just like breathwork is a practice and movement is a practice and meditation is a practice. Kriya are energetic movements. They're repetitive energetic movements. Sometimes they're paired with a sound. So this is audio, so I'm trying to think how to describe it. There is a really popular school, especially on the West Coast. It's called Kundalini Yoga. And oftentimes they're wearing all white and you see them doing these big kind of crazy movements over and over and over again, and they'll do it for 20 minutes. And so you can get into these really heightened states. Obviously, you're encouraging your energetic body to raise. Your mind is getting kind of wild. And then you get into this transcendent state. And you feel expansive and you feel connected. So Kriya Yoga, again, there's lots of different types. Some of them are calm. Some of them are highly energized. Some of them have you chanting sounds. It's actually the most powerful form of yoga that I've ever come across. You can get to a state with Kriya Yoga in 3 minutes. That would take you 30 minutes to do with Vinyasa Yoga.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
So I use an app called FitOn.
Okay.
And they have a range of teachers, a range of types of exercises, lots of yoga and bar and Pilates. So I mostly do yoga, and then I throw in bar and Pilates on occasion.
Yeah.
And there's this, what you just said reminds me of something. I can't think of what it's called, but Juliana Huff from Dancing with the Stars
Okay.
is doing kind of what you were just doing with big movements and fast breathing. And she's like, I put it on, I had it on for about a minute, and I was like, I don't know what to think of this. And I went back to
Yeah,
a regular yoga video.
for sure. That was probably it. There's also Taryn Toomey has something called The Class, which she's kind of labeled and sold. And it's showing up with different names and labels now, but Kriya Yoga has really only been on the American scene for like 5 to 10 years. Okay. And even then only in California.
This very much looked like a California thing to me.
Yeah, for sure. It's
not judging.
Oh my gosh, Nikki, when I moved to Raleigh, I started hosting these classes, and like I just did all of it. I like brought people in, I had them chanting, I had them doing Kriya, and and the people who stayed had a great time. But there were people who were like, I'm out. Like, Ben, your girlfriend's weird. Like, I'm out.
I think if somebody had warned me what I was in for, I probably would have tried it. Like,
yeah,
lasted longer than a minute, maybe.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of, hey, let's do this, and jumped right in. And I'm like, what on earth am I watching? Like, I can't do this.
Yeah, and that's a big thing for Kriya Yoga, especially, but for all of it, meditation, breathwork, you can't do it as an observer. So you can take yourself to a bar class and kind of half-heartedly go through the movements, and your legs will be sore the next day. But you can't really half-heartedly do a yoga class and get the benefits, that yoga alchemy that we're talking about, because you're not actually accessing the mental emotional layer. So it takes a level of sincerity. And that's something, right before we left India for the first time, they were talking to us about integrating everything we've learned. And they kept saying this, like, only teach to sincere students. Mm-hmm. Like, don't go out and just like teach free classes online, with Kriya Yoga, because people are going to like just watch you rather than participate with you. And that's been a lesson that I've had to learn over time, especially as I continue to work in the corporate wellness space. And so I'm like, okay, but let's talk, and I think that's so fun. You can meet people where they are, you can speak their language, mm-hmm. And you can still help them, just get a little more interested. And if somebody says like, hey, Sandra, I heard you can initiate me in Kriya Yoga, they're like, yes, come over. We're doing it. You have 3 hours. Okay, we can do it in 2.
Well, that's a good segue to kind of wrap up and tell everybody how they can get in touch with you and where they can find you.
So I'm most active right now on Instagram, Sandra Litke _flows. And I also host classes on the website Arketa, ARKETA.com. I'm not hosting any live classes there now, but I plan to start doing a weekly live sattva class again soon. And that will have all of the yummy stuff. That'll have the meditation and the breath work and the Kriya. And then we do a little yoga asana to integrate all that juicy energy that we created in our bodies. So I'm excited to get that started again soon. I'm also the community manager for a group here in Raleigh, North Carolina called Nova Retreats. And we host daily outdoor pay what you can classes. We try to bring yoga to anyone who's interested in it. And that's here in downtown Raleigh. So every day at 6 p.m. in Fred Fletcher Park, which is kind of just north of town. We have a beautiful outdoor class. We have usually anywhere from 10 to 30 people show up. And you guys just bring yourself and a mat. I'm usually teaching on Wednesdays, but that usually switches around. And then we're at Dorothea Dix on Saturday and Sundays. So if you want to check out Nova Retreats, we've got a website. And I'll give Nikki that information. So you can come take my class, or we've got a core group of really experienced, wonderful teachers who all want to teach with our authentic voice. So teaching outdoors and teaching with this community allows us to teach our yoga. And we've been able to find some really incredible students and sincere practitioners who show up.
That is awesome. Yeah, I'll put links to your website and the You just said it and it slipped my
Nova,
mind.
like
Nova.
supernova.
Thank you.
Nova retreats. And then, oh yeah, I forgot my main breadwinner is my office yoga business. So
Which is how we met.
Yeah, Awake Corporate Yoga is what I do as my day job. And so we have corporate wellness programs, so I can come in weekly or bi-weekly, and we do meditation and chair yoga. We also do special events, so I can come in maybe before you have a training day, or just as a kind of one-off wellness event. And we'll talk about why yoga works, why you should be interested in it, and what you can do behind your desk.
Awesome. Thank you again so much for doing this with me tonight. I'm so happy. I feel like I learned just mind-blowing amount tonight. I thought I knew yoga, but I found out I didn't really know yoga. So you just opened my mind so much.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So thanks again, Nikki. This was a blast.
Yeah, it was. Thanks again to Sandra for joining me, and thank you for listening. If you have an idea for a show topic or would like to share some of your own paranormal or spiritual experiences on the show, please use the contact form at peeppodcast.com to reach out to me. That's PEEP podcast.com. Remember, that stands for People Experiencing Everyday Paranormal. You can keep up with the show on its Facebook page, facebook.com/peeppodcast. We have a group linked from that page in case you're interested in joining the conversation. One thing to note about that group is that I only approve group members who answer the questions, and unfortunately, Facebook doesn't keep a list of people who'd be interested in being on the show. So if you said yes to that question, please get in touch through the website. If you enjoy the podcast, please give it some rating love on your favorite podcast app. Share it with friends and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Doing so will help the podcast be found by others. Special thanks to everyone who has given the show some love. I really appreciate it. The Peep Podcast is 100% free to enjoy, but it's not free for me to create. So like many other independent podcasters, I'll happily accept donations. If you're interested in supporting the show financially, you can join me on patreon.com/Nicolle or message me from my Venmo handle. All donations will be received with humble gratitude. No matter how you support the show, listening, telling others about it, financial assistance, or any other way, I absolutely appreciate your being here. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe and be well.